Today I'd like to continue our journey through the book of Numbers. We're taking a look at some of the books in the Bible from a section we call the Pentateuch, which really deals with the first 5 books of the Bible, and the 4th book is the book of Numbers. At this point on our journey, we are up to chapter 8 of the book of Numbers. And in chapter 8, the Lord tells Moses to set up the 7 lamps with the light toward the front of the lampstands, because the light then would go towards the altar. So the focus of the light would be on the altar, and you notice that there are 7, typical of the menorah, the 7 days of the week, and really the altar for the Jewish people, that really connoted the presence of God. So the idea of the light being towards the altar was very important. Now the Levites then become purified for their service to the Lord. They will be washed with water, and the water will purify them, and they will be able then to offer sacrifices. And the Israelites assembled, and in a very nice scene, they laid hands on the Levites, and the Levites then were dedicated to the Lord. So this really ancient gesture of the laying on of the hands, which of course we still have in our liturgies for today, a very important gesture that symbolizes the power of God coming into the person. So the laying on of hands here very, very symbolically done for all of the Levites, so that they would feel the support of the community, of course, but they would also feel the power of God. So it's a coming together of God and community. The Lord has taken the Levites as his firstborn. And this was a very important aspect of the theology of the Jewish people, the idea of the firstborn, the specialness of the firstborn, the whole idea of the primogenitor, the first one who comes into the family, has very special significance. So for God, the Israelites are the firstborn of God. They are so loved by God. They are special in God's eyes. And so this idea of the Levites now being the firstborn, because they're going to be the ones who will be at service to the altar. So they are the firstborn. And the Levites will be in charge of the services at the meeting tent. They will be under the direction of Aaron. Of course, Aaron is the one who the priesthood of the Jewish people goes through. He has been designated by God to be the priest, the brother of Moses, and also his sons. And at this point, 2 of the sons are still alive, and 2 have passed away. And the Levites will be in service. Very interesting how it's set up. They start their service at age 25, and at age 50, they retire. So those 25 years are their years of service. So we talk about the retirement age today for priests, for pastors, for bishops, for cardinals. And of course, there's always some discussion about should there be a retirement age even for the Pope, because of course Pope Benedict XVI has retired, but there is no set retirement age for the Pope, even though some say maybe 75 should be the age. But it's interesting, this idea of retirement. We see it with the Levites in terms of their service to the Lord. This age of 50 is set for them. And of course, you have to translate that into today's ages and how it would correspond. Certainly, the people in the time that we're talking about, they would have died. They wouldn't have as much of a lifespan, of course, as people today. So you have to take that into consideration too when you're dealing with that age of 50. In chapter 9, then, of the book of Numbers, talks about the celebration of Passover, so important, and that is celebrated at the evening twilight of the 14th day of the first month of the year. So when that twilight comes, that's when that celebration takes place. Now, what happens if a person is unclean in terms of celebrating the Passover? Maybe they've had contact with a corpse, or maybe a person has been away on a journey at the time of the Passover. So we're talking here, of course, the people are still in the desert, and you wonder why they're talking about people on a journey. It's because naturally this would have been written later on when the people of the Jewish faith would have traveled to other cities. So maybe it would be conceivable that somebody would not be home with their family to celebrate Passover. They'd be away on a journey. So the Lord told Moses, if that was the case, if they were unclean because of contact with a corpse, or if they were on a way on a journey, the Lord told Moses they could celebrate it on the 14th day of the second month. So again, keeping that parallel with the 14th day, but instead of the first month, they would translate that down to the second month. Now, if someone does not celebrate the Passover who is not traveling, so they have no excuse, they're not traveling, and that person is also clean, they didn't have any contact with a corpse, or there was no uncleanliness from any transaction that they had, that person then is cut off from the community because they have no excuse. They weren't traveling, they're not unclean, they should be celebrating the Passover. So if they don't, the idea was they are cut off from the community. They're excluded from the community if that is the case. Also, very interestingly, the book of Numbers, and of course Exodus talks about this as well, and Leviticus, the resident alien should celebrate the Passover also. So even though the person is an alien, they come from another country, maybe even a different faith, perhaps. Maybe they haven't fully embraced Judaism, but they are a resident there and an alien. They also should be celebrating the Passover. Now, the cloud that was so important for the Jewish people at this point in their journey in the desert, the cloud covered the tent of dwelling by day. At night, it had the appearance of fire. And the people would move when the cloud moved, and they would stop when the cloud came to rest. So the cloud here was very important. It gave direction to the whole journey of the Jewish people. Sometimes the cloud would stay for a month or longer in a place. And sometimes it was just a day, or sometimes a few days. So it varied. And the Israelites would follow the direction of the cloud. The halo around the head of a saint that we see sometimes depicted is really our version of the cloud in popular artistic expression. So this concept of the halo is the person is in communion with God, the person feels God's presence, and so this was very much certainly a part of the tradition going all the way back to the cloud that would direct the Jewish people. Now, what do we see in chapter 10 of the book of Numbers? Well, the Lord directs Moses to have trumpets made, and the trumpets would be blown to alert the people. The sons of Aaron would blow the trumpets, so they would have that function of blowing the trumpets, and they would be blown on days of celebration and days of feasts. So the trumpets, a very important part of the journey of the Jewish people. Now, the people left by tribe with their leaders guiding them. So each tribe had a leader, and they would be in a certain formation, and that's how they would journey together. Moses asked his brother-in-law, Hobab, to serve as a guide, because Hobab knew the desert areas well, and he could show the people where to camp. So it was very important to have him as a guide. He would have known where the oases are, which is very important. It would have been crucial for them because there they could water their flocks, get water themselves. Now he preferred himself to go back to Midian, but he agreed because Moses pleaded with him. So Moses made that special plea, and Hobab, his brother-in-law, said, okay, even though I don't want to do this, Moses, I'll help you out. The Israelites traveled from Mount Sinai for 3 days with the Ark of the Covenant. Moses prayed that all the enemies would be scattered when the Ark went out, and for God to return to the troops of Israel when the Ark came to rest at the meeting tent. So that was Moses' prayer, that as they took the ark, that was symbolizing, of course, the presence of God among the people. Certainly the ark, along with the cloud, that would direct the movement. That if they encountered any enemies, through the intercession of the ark, those enemies could be overcome, or maybe those enemies would have a change of heart, let them go, whatever the situation would be. That was their prayer. And then when the ark would come to rest at the meeting tent, again, that all of the troops of Israel would come back and that they would be safe. So we see here a very important aspect of the journey is that relationship with God, that love for God that the people had, because they followed God's direction. The cloud moved, the presence of God was telling them to move, and they followed what God said. And of course, as we know, the very first person in the Bible who followed that direction of God and said, "Yes, God, I will follow you," was our very own Father Abraham. Father Abraham had many friends. Many friends had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. So let's all praise the Lord. Praise the Lord, and next time we will see you for Numbers chapter 11. God bless.